Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm Joanne McCall. This is Media Bites Studio. This is where we talk to authors, we talk to writers, we talk to professionals in their business, and we get the scoop on the lowdown on whatever topic we happen to want to uncover. And I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today. I think it's so relevant in our country right now and in each of our lives. And Kelly McDonald is the person we're going to be chatting with today. And let me just introduce her with the official bio, and then we're going to let her rip because I think we're going to have a great time today. So Kelly McDonald is an acclaimed speaker who specializes in consumer trends and changing demographics. She is the president of McDonald Marketing and has authored 4 best-selling books on customer service or customer experience, leadership, and marketing, all from the standpoint of working with people not like you. Brilliant. Her book, How to Work With and Lead People Not Like You, has been on 2 bestseller lists. It continues to get rave reviews because this is just such an essential topic right now. Anyway, Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joanne. I'm happy to be here.
So the first way I want to enter this subject is to ask you this. I'm approached by authors and writers all the time about how to get an agent, how to get a publishing deal. And you have a story that is incredibly unique. And the first time I heard it, I was just blown away. And I thought, okay, I got to work with this woman because she's incredible. So share with us your story about how you got 4 best-selling books published. How did that happen?
Okay, I rarely tell this story because it makes me a little uncomfortable because I have some very good friends who have been trying to get their novel published for like a decade and they can't get anywhere. I had no desire to write a book, never gave it one single thought. And so there I am. I was living in Texas at the time and I had a client meeting in Austin, and it was on a Friday night. I flew down there and I landed at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock on a Friday night, 5 o'clock, whatever, end of the day. And there's a voicemail on my phone. And the voicemail is from Richard Naramore, my editor at Wiley, largest publisher of business books in the world. And he left me this voicemail that said, "Hi, Kelly. I'm Richard Naramore, the senior editor at Wiley. I came across your presentation called How to Market to People Not Like You, and I'm very curious about that, and I would like to talk to you." And I was like, "You return this phone call, like you can blow off some other calls." I was like, "Wiley's calling me, how bizarre." So I called him again. It's like the end of the day on a Friday. I call him thinking I'm going to get his voicemail, and all I'm going to be able to do is just go, "Hey, I got your voicemail. Let's try to connect next week." And then at least like he knows I tried. Well, he picks up and it's, he's in New York. So it's now like 6 o'clock there or whatever. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to leave you a voicemail." I said, "I'm sure I'm the only thing standing between you and a glass of Chardonnay or something like that." And he was like, "No, I've got time." We spent an hour and a half on the phone. And what he wanted to know was how I came up with that topic, what that topic covered. And what I said was, "How did you find me?" I mean, he's in the literary world, and I'm in the speaking world. And he said, "I was looking through the database on the National Speakers Association website, and, along with a bunch of other speakers, probably thousands." He said, "I came across your presentation called How to Market to People Not Like You." And he said, "I was really intrigued. So here I am." So it was a PowerPoint presentation, Joanne. I mean, it's like, this is just like, it's a PowerPoint presentation. And he couldn't see it. He just saw the title. So we started talking about that. And he was like, what do you mean by people not like you?" And I said, "That's the way I define diversity. It's not just, race, ethnicity, age, gender, sexuality, or whatever." I was like, if you're a mom and I'm not, we're going to be different, and he just loved the idea. And he said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And again, this is an hour and a half on a Friday night. So now it's like 7:30 his time. I keep trying to like end the conversation and let him get back to his life. And he's like, no, this is good. So he said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I said, "No." And he said, "I want you to consider it. And I'm going to send you a book proposal template. And I'm going to share with you how best to fill it out." Because of course he doesn't even make a decision. They make a decision at Wiley, a team of people or whatever. So I filled it all out. And this is the part that I clearly remember. I was sitting in Bloomington, Illinois, and I had just finished speaking for State Farm. And I'm in the parking lot in my car rental, about to drive myself back to the airport. And I get a voicemail. I've been in a meeting all day. I'm listening to my voicemail, and there's one from Richard. "Hi, Kelly, it's Richard. I have great news. Your book proposal has been approved." And he said, so I'm going to want to set up a call with you in 3 weeks. I'm going to want to see chapter 1, chapter 7, and chapter, 13. So this is not like Stephen King who gets to go sit in the woods and write a novel or something like that. It was like, but anyway, that's my story. Is I never once thought about it, and I had a catchy title for a presentation, and it's just bizarre. And then the first book became a bestseller, so then they want another one, and that became a bestseller, so then they want a third one, and then they want a fourth one, and so there's 4 now, all with Wiley, and I love them.
I mean, that is just a fantastic story. It speaks to so many things, but I mean, when you hit a topic that just resonates, then they'll go for it. And he found you, and he found this PowerPoint presentation. He couldn't even see the slides. I mean, that's just,
You just like the title.
Oh my gosh.
I will tell you, all of your listeners and followers and viewers and stuff, is the 2 most searched words on the internet are the words how to. So how to promises something. It promises a solution, right? I mean, if you go to YouTube and you put in how to tie a bow tie or how to strip wallpaper, that's what people search for. They search for solutions. And I think because it was a catchy title with how to market to people not like you, there were kind of 2 things. But that's something that I've learned along the way, is how to is very powerful, and it's simple.
Thank you for sharing that tip. I'm sure a lot of people will put that to use. So that's great. So you touched on this next question that I want to get into, and that's really the definition. When we think of diversity, which is a huge issue right now, we mostly think of gender, we think of race, we think of religion. Those are really the big 3, maybe age.
Sexual identification. Yep.
Okay. So, but it goes beyond that, which is what you're touching on. So would you give us some more examples of the kind of diversity that you're talking about?
Yes. My definition is extremely broad. My definition is any way that you can be different from me. So for example, introverts and extroverts, right? Morning people and night owls. And while this might sound kind of, haha, or clever or whatever, it really comes down to important stuff in business. I mean, if you're a team leader and one of your team members is a definite night owl, and you know this, and they're not a morning person, why would you schedule a meeting with them at 9 a.m? They're not at their best. Schedule a meeting at 11:30 in the morning or 1 in the afternoon. We can use our differences to actually be more effective. So rural and metro, someone who lives in a loft in Manhattan is very different than someone who lives on a ranch in West Texas. Generational differences. I always joke that my 86-year-old mother, her idea of a great meeting with you, Joanne, would be to come to your office all afternoon. Okay. All afternoon. No, that would be her definition of great service, right? You being patient with her questions and stuff. And most of the rest of us would be like, I'm out on that. Just text me. Yeah. So there's all kinds of different differences. I mean, and other things that play into business too, like education. Someone with a GED is very different than someone with a PhD. Work experience. Someone who's been working for a year and a half is very different than someone who's been working for 25 years. So when I tell audiences, think of the word diversity in any way that makes sense to you as I go through a presentation, these are always, and there's no end to this. I've given interactive exercises with a group and I've said, okay, what else can you guys think of? And they'll be like cat and dog people, books or movies, do you want to read a book or do you want to see the movie? Sunrise, sunset, and even things like risk takers or those who are risk averse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And thinking
technology, technophobes
versus tech savvy. Absolutely. Yeah. And thinking styles, an engineer thinks very differently than a graphic designer does, right? A graphic designer is going to be creative, and engineer is going to be like, but does it work? And so I see diversity all around all of us. And what I want audiences to do, and your listeners and followers, is to just broaden their thinking about that. It's not just race, ethnicity, age, gender, sexuality. It's anything you want it to be. And increasingly, we're all working with people not like us.
Absolutely. And I know you speak to CEOs and C-suite people all over the country. You crisscross. In fact, getting this interview today was a challenge because you're on the go all the time, and you're speaking to these audiences. Yeah,
in a hotel room in Atlanta.
I appreciate you carving out some time for us.
Yeah.
So obviously CEOs and other leaders, they want to know how to help their teams and help their people to be able to work with each other.
Right.
And so what's the greatest problem they have? I mean, I would imagine some you really don't want to deal with it and others know they have to deal with it. So what is your advice to them? And I know that's a broad question, but how would you like to start answering
No,
that?
it's a great question, Joanne. So the thing I would start with is CEOs and business in America has come around to realize and recognize and embrace the fact that diversity is an asset. Okay, the study after study after study shows that diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams on every metric
Hmm.
in which business success is measured: sales, profit, customer retention, customer satisfaction, employee retention. I mean, you name it, on every metric that we use to establish a success pattern, diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams. In fact, there's never been a study ever that shows the opposite. All right. So
Hmm.
we know that diverse teams build business. And so business doesn't run on kumbaya, and it doesn't run on we are the world. And I mean, I'm all about it, but I mean, it doesn't run on that. It doesn't run on feelings. It runs on success and performance. And so diversity of teams is actually delivering on two really important things: culturally broadening our perspectives and our viewpoints and getting diversity of thinking, and then also performance, just flat out performance. So it's not as hard to convince a CEO of it as you might imagine. A lot of the CEOs that come to me are the ones who are already on board. They're just wondering, like, how do I do this? And what I find that is the hardest thing is that, or the thing that they struggle with the most, is that people these days now are so afraid of saying the wrong thing at work or having what they say taken the wrong way, that they choose to say nothing. And I don't think that's good for business. I think we always have to be able to talk about our differences, especially when we don't agree. I mean, business is easy if we all agree. Then we're just, off and running and doing our thing. But when we don't agree, when you have a different perspective, and I don't understand your approach and you don't understand mine, that doesn't have to mean conflict. It has to mean exploration. And so, but I find that the biggest barrier is, like, people know that there's a risk that if they say the wrong thing or it comes out the wrong way or whatever, they could lose their job or they could get reprimanded, and so they just zip it. And what I want to teach people is how to talk about those things, because
So
they
what?
need the how.
How do they do that then? Let's jump right into it. How do you help them to do that? How do you get people to speak up when they're feeling like, I'm afraid, I don't want to, something will happen.
I
What if I
actually
offend people?
Right.
That's a big
I
one.
actually I cover that in many of my sessions, and I talk about how, start small. Like let's say you're a team leader and you got your team together and you guys have never talked about diversity at work or whatever, and this team leader doesn't know how to do it either, right? And like maybe they've been tasked with, like, we need to do better on DE&I at our organization, at this XYZ organization. And then you've got a VP, who's tasked with doing that and work and making their own teams more diverse. What I find is just being really vulnerable and honest. And so in that case, you could start and sit down and say, get your team together and say, I've never talked about race or ethnicity or diversity in any way at work, and I'm not sure how to do it now. I think I'm probably going to be a little clunky, perhaps a little inept, and I hope you'll bear with me. But what I want to do is get the conversation going amongst all of us so that we can do better. And if I'm a little clunky and inept, maybe some of you feel the same way too. And something that simple does a lot. Number one, it's saying, I don't know how to do this. Okay, I'm probably not going to be very eloquent. So you're calling it before anybody else can call it. And I hope you'll bear with me. I hope you'll bear with me really brings people in, because now they know that you're probably going to be a little clunky and you've just asked for their help to just, let's ride over that hump, And then also at the end saying, I can imagine it might be a little awkward for some of you too. No one wants to admit it's awkward for them unless somebody else does. And then everybody's like, yeah, me too, So I think no, really, it's like somebody lets like, you can exhale in a room like that. If your own boss or your team leader is going, this is my first attempt at talking about this. And so maybe it's a little awkward for you too. And people are like, It's not
Yeah.
just me. It's not just me.
Yeah.
But I also think it's about really teaching people what to say. Many of us have learned what not to say, but we don't know what to say. So, for example, I firmly believe that you can't just give people a don't without giving them a do. So, here's an example. Here's a don't. Don't say to someone, how did you get your job? Because when you say, how did you get your job? The implication is somehow they didn't earn it,
Hmm.
right? Like, how did you get your job? Well, what, you're either you're either a quota or a token or something, or you knew somebody, or someone got you into this job or whatever. It's kind of an insulting, mildly insulting thing. So here's a better way. The do would be, tell me about the role that you were in prior to this role, because that's a legitimate question, because most of us have the jobs that we're in now based on what we were doing before.
Hmm.
That's what qualified us to do this, right? So don't say to somebody, how did you get your job? It's a really demeaning comment. We don't mean it that way, but that's how it sounds. And a better way to say is, tell me about the role that you were in prior to this one, and how do you feel about the new job that you're in, or whatever. Don't ask somebody where they're from. And don't ask somebody, like if somebody's Middle Eastern, has an accent, looks different than you, don't go, where are you from? And then they're going to go, Cleveland. And then you're going to go, no, but where are you from? I mean,
Yeah.
it's a cliche, but it actually happens, right? And so a better way, if you're curious about somebody's background, is to say, hey, tell me about yourself. What I find is when you say, tell me about yourself, people will tell you what they think is important for you to know.
Hmm.
And maybe it's, hey, I just moved this weekend, or maybe it's, I got a puppy, or maybe it's like, wow, this is my first job in the legal profession, or whatever. But let them lead. And it always leads to a conversation where you can ping pong off each other and then just talk. People are people, and we want to talk and we want to share. But what you don't want to do is say something that is making the other person feel like other, like you're not like us, you're not like me, you're not like the rest of us. So what I teach people is our curiosity is natural, and we're going to always be curious about different people, especially somebody who's new that we're working with. It's perfectly okay to say, tell me about yourself. And one that I like, just as an icebreaker, is like, what's your favorite family tradition in your family?
That's a nice one.
It is a nice one, because
Yeah.
people, some are funny, some are goofy, some are corny, whatever, but it's a bond because we all have some family tradition, whether it's cookies that are made or a meal that's prepared or what people do.
One of my favorites is how do you like to spend your free time?
Yes,
You know.
right. Absolutely. What do you do for fun?
Yeah.
And
What do you
then,
do when you're not slaving away around here?
right. Or
You
what,
know?
yeah, what would be, what's that really fun day? One of the things, sadly, Joanne, that I find is when I ask people, what do you do for fun? Those who are parents really have a hard time answering that, because they just don't have a lot of time for themselves. They think that playing with their kids is fun and, going to their sporting events. But when you try to pinpoint and go, no, but what do you do for fun? They're like, I don't know. I haven't done anything in years. So,
Okay, be careful of that one.
yeah, or at least have a backup and.
Those are great ideas for breaking the ice and having conversations and kind of opening things up so people feel, they like you and you like them. And that's how you like
People are
people, is to
people.
have those kinds of conversations. I've read your books, and you talk a lot about language.
Mhm.
One that really struck me of something not to say, and I hear it a lot, is let's agree to disagree.
Ah, my least
That's
favorite.
just, yeah. Tell
Horrible.
us about that.
Okay. So I was raised by very polite parents who drilled manners into my and my siblings' heads, and they were very insistent upon that. And one of the things that they drilled into my head when I was like, 10 years old was, now, whenever you disagree with someone, Kelly, then you just say, let's agree to disagree. Okay. So they're polite words, Joanne, but they don't work. And here's why. If I were to say to you, and you just got to go along with me here, I'm going to act this out. Okay. If I
Okay.
were to say to you, Joanne, let's just agree to disagree, shall we? I mean, like, it's got like, well, and it's got this like superior tone, like you're obviously not bright enough to see that I'm right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got all of that, okay? But the reality is, and the why it doesn't work is, if I say, Joanne, let's agree to disagree, and you say, fine, then you and I both know right then and there that this conversation is over. And
Yeah.
I think, especially in business, the conversation should never be over. We should always keep talking, especially about the stuff that we don't agree on. So stop saying agree to disagree. They're polite words, but they don't work. So say instead, I see it differently. Because I see it differently as not antagonistic. I'm not provoking you in any way. I'm not picking a fight. I'm not acting superior to you, like, let's agree to disagree, shall we? Because you obviously don't get it. I'm just saying I see it differently. And I'm not even in that phrase trying to persuade you over to my point of view. I mean, it's a simple declarative statement. I see it differently. And here, say that to me. Say, Kelly, I see it differently.
Kelly, I see it differently.
Tell me how you see it, Joanne.
Well,
That's what's going to happen.
yeah.
The point is, it's not that conversation of ender of agree to disagree. If you say, I see it differently, no one is going to just kind of go, uh-huh, and walk away. I mean, it fosters a little bit of like curiosity, like, well, tell me how you see it.
Yes.
And we're continuing that conversation. We might still not agree, but we have a better understanding of where the person is coming from on that. And I think that's at the root of, especially in business, of what we need to know.
What about, I don't want to get into politics, but it's such a part of
Yeah,
our country now, and people taking sides.
right.
So how do we deal with that kind of thing? Because that can be very explosive. People can be very, very tied to their
Oh, for
stance
sure.
in that. So do you give people suggestions on how to deal with that?
I do, because it comes up at every single event that I do.
Mm,
And first of all, most organizations, business wise, are trying to really stay away from politics, and they basically tell their employees, like, you can talk about whatever you want, but you know politics is just, it's a bit of a grenade these days, right?
yeah,
So I think one of the things that's really important for people to realize is no one has their political beliefs because they think they're wrong, right? And so
right.
it's like everyone thinks that what they believe and what they think and the way that they see things in their perspective is
Correct.
right, certainly
Hmm.
right for them. So you should never demonize your audience. No one ever changed their mind because they were told they were stupid, right?
Right.
So these clashes that we have of like, you're stupid, that's an ignorant, there's nothing to be gained by that. Again, if your goal is to actually try to have a constructive adult conversation with someone and truly, like, tell me how you see it, Joanne. I mean, I want to know. I'm not afraid of conversations that are completely opposite of what I think. In fact, I'm kind of curious, like, tell me how you came to that belief, or tell me why you see it like that. What's behind it? But I think that people are so clunky about how to talk about this that they actually go for the attack, right? They go into attack mode and they start to try to disassemble the other person's argument, right? So if I say, okay, I voted this way and you voted this way, and I go, why did you vote that way? And they start to, like, rattle it off. And then I start to disassemble what I think is the logic in that.
Hmm.
Nobody ever changed their mind because someone told them they were wrong or stupid. And so it's really more about, I think, bringing someone to your point of view, or at least learning and being open to learning why they think what they think. I mean, I really love, tell me more about that, because
Mm.
sometimes people's idea is flawed or a little off, whatever. But the thinking behind it isn't.
Mm.
So I'm all about, like, let's get to, how did you come up with that? Like, how did you learn to see it this way? What were the influences on you? Because that often tells a whole different story than just how you voted.
Hmm. So curiosity is really a big piece to this.
Yeah, and just, I mean, respect. I mean, I think a big part of diversity is respect, and you're not always going to like the politics of another person. I mean, even in families that happens, and they don't
Yes.
stop loving each other because they disagree. And I think there are situations where you set it aside, and business can be one of those. I mean, a lot
Hmm.
of businesses are like, we are not going to engage in a political discussion in this corporation or organization unless it has to do with our business, because they just know that it just doesn't work very well. It's a very,
Do you have any stories of companies that embraced your suggestions and you saw a difference? in the workplace? Are you ever able to come back and see in action what's going on?
Yes,
Oh,
one of my favorites is Zebra Technologies. They make the barcode scanners.
hmm,
Okay, so every scanner that you see, that's them. And they are a global company. So they have gotten diversity all along. I mean, they have people all over the world. And when you have a global employee base, of course there's diversity. I mean, they're literally speaking other languages, they're in different time zones, they're in Asia, they're in, South Africa, etc. And so they were well on their way when they brought me in, but I gave them some simple how-tos. What I find, Joanne, is that people know the why of diversity. They've gotten that message. What they struggle with is the how.
hmm,
And what I gave them were hows, whether it's the little scripts that I was talking about or different ways to approach working with different people. And they have always done a fantastic job, but they've taken also what I've given them and they've just run with it. And I'm so proud of them because they do not give lip service to diversity. They walk the walk every
hmm.
single day, and they are pouring investment into that in terms of resources. And it's very genuine. And and again, business doesn't run on feelings. So no one does anything in business that doesn't work, right? Let's say a marketing campaign, if it fails,
Right,
you pull it and you put
right.
something else up there. So the businesses and organizations that are pouring money into DEI efforts are those who are already seeing the results.
Hmm.
They're not going to keep pouring money into something if it's just not showing results. It does show results. Did you know, here's a fun fact,
Good.
that companies that have diverse teams, aside from all the metrics that I was talking about, sales, growth, profit, customer retention, employee, one of the things that happens on that list is reduced employee absenteeism.
Hmm.
It's been studied. People who work for companies that have diverse teams actually show up to work more often. Why?
That's interesting.
Because they like it. They like it. No, there have been many studies that basically show that when people are introduced to a diverse team, sure, it's a big adjustment at first. They've always worked with people who are, let's say, old white guys or old, white women or something like that, or people like them. And then they end up with a diverse team and they enjoy it. They
Hmm.
learn more, they enjoy their job more, they enjoy their peers. And so I just think that's really interesting that it's reduced employee absenteeism shows up as a metric.
So is there another book in your future here?
Oh, I don't know. It's a lot harder to write a book than people think. And I
Yeah.
wrote my last one in just let's see, about 100 days. And so I already have a full-time job, so it's like when
Yeah.
I'm writing a book, it's like a second job. I kind of have to like mentally gear up. I think there's definitely another book because I think that where we are with diversity now is evolving, and we're learning so much, and there's so many awesome companies that are doing great things, and those become case studies. I think that in 10 years, this is my hope, that in 10 years, we will all look back on our diversity efforts at this time and go, how cute, right? Because we're going to know so much more, and we're going to look back
Yeah.
on these initial efforts and go, oh, that was cute. The same way that I look back on social media in the
Mhm.
2000s, when social media came into play, and businesses are going, wait, do we have friends or followers? I don't get this, and now
Yes,
we look
yes.
back on that and it just seems so silly and so basic, but it was all new. And I think there's another book. I'm going to have something else to say. And
Yeah, with social, I know you will. I mean, I know you will. You will absolutely have more to say
Well, and I'm
because,
learning too. I'm learning too. And so
yeah,
what I'm always doing is I'm teaching my audiences, I'm teaching my clients, but they're teaching me too. And so I take those success stories, and I think that's what I think my next effort would be to how to take this further in your real life, in your personal life, in your work life, filled with do's and don'ts. And I don't just tell people don't, I tell them why don't.
yeah.
Like, okay, it's not just enough to go, don't do that. It's like, why? I'll tell you
Well,
why.
and then you give an alternative or two,
Right.
what to do instead,
Yep. Yep.
because I see
People want to
lots,
do the right thing, Joanne. They
they
want to.
do.
They just have no idea what that is or what that sounds like, and they're afraid to try. And I get it.
So for those watching and listening who would love to bring Kelly McDonald in to speak to their company, I mean, how do they reach you? How do they find you?
You can call us. You can call my business manager, Sally Shokos. You can go to my website, which is mcdonaldmarketing.com, and her phone number is right there on the contact page. She handles all of my engagements and pretty much runs my life. And we would love to work with anybody who wants to work with us.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us, Kelly. It was
Oh,
very enlightening. It was wonderful. I'd love to have you come back again sometime.
well, I'd love to
Okay.
come back, but more importantly, I'd like to have dinner with you.
Oh, yes, let's do that for sure. Everybody's invited. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks for having me. This is a great topic, and thanks for putting a spotlight on it.